my god. I just had the worst dream ever. It was so scary. I dreamt that I lost my balloon. So glad to have it. That was weird. Where is my balloon? There it is. Hi. My balloon. What the? Oh!
Hello, welcome to number 3 of our series. Today's topic is going to be Samsara. Samsara is a Buddhist term, but don't get hung up on that because I think that there's a lot that can be gained from everybody from the understanding of what the Buddhists say about Samsara. Samsara basically means the kind of cycle of death and rebirth that we go through. And of course, you know, Buddhists believe in reincarnation, so they're talking about this process of cyclical existence. But really, the reason that that's important is because they talk about the necessity of wanting to escape that cyclical existence. Now, to many of us, we think, wow, you know, if we get a second or third or a fourth or a millionth chance at making this whole life thing work, that would be a great thing, right? It would be a wonderful thing. Well, according to the Buddhists, that wouldn't be such a great thing because the minute we are reborn, or the minute we're born as a sentient form, we inevitably are going to have to experience death. And so it's this cycle of constant suffering. So because of that, samsara has also been associated with the physical world or the world of suffering. Now, I've heard people commonly refer to samsara as being the world of suffering. Well, so rather than spending a lot of time talking about the pure Buddhist definitions of cyclical existence and samsara, let's focus on why the Buddhists believe that the samsaric existence is riddled with suffering and why it's so important to escape from this cyclical existence. And this is the part where it doesn't really matter whether you're Buddhist or Christian or Hindu or Jew, because the main thing is it's talking about the human experience and the human condition and the pain and suffering that we experience and that we inflict here on earth. That's the kinds of things that we're hoping to escape. So for the rest of this, I want to spend some time talking about that idea of samsara and why it's necessary to kind of escape it. And as Gyalpa Rinpoche pointed out this week, actually, is that whether we believe in life after death or not is irrelevant. The point is if we think that this is all there is, if we think that what we gain here is the end of the story, then our tendency to not only be kind to others is not there, and also our tendency to be happy is not there. That if we look at something beyond this lifetime, bigger than this lifetime, then we have a tendency to be kinder to other people, and we have a tendency to be a little bit more happy because we're working towards kind of bigger goals, more altruistic or spiritual goals. So So let's talk about why the Buddhists believe that samsara, or the cyclical existence, is wrought with suffering. Well, the first is the obvious thing, that the minute we're born, as soon as we take our first breath, we are subject to aging, sickness, and death. And so the very act of being born kind of sets us up to experience suffering and loss. And it's unavoidable. There's nothing we can do about it. Now, not to be a downer, as this goes on, you'll understand this isn't all about, it doesn't have to be a kind of a sad or a depressing topic. But the second thing is that if we're living in this cyclical existence, we're going to experience pain and we're going to experience despair. One of my favorite stories, and again, I'm paraphrasing, so please, if anybody is really fluent in the Dharma, don't chastise me. But there's a story that I came across years ago, and I couldn't tell you the source. The story was that a young mother came up to Buddhi Shakyamuni, or the historical Buddha, and she had her dead child in her arms. And she was very upset. And she said, "Lord Buddha, I heard that you can work miracles, that you can raise the dead." And Buddha said, "Well, I can, but you have to do something for me first." And she says, anything in the world that I'll do in order to have my child again. And Lord Buddha said, "Bring me a mustard seed, or a seed, from a household that has never known death." And so she was very happy, and she left. And so a year later, maybe 2 years later, Buddha's teaching again, and the same woman comes up to him, and she's glowing, and she's radiant, and she's smiling. And Buddha said, "Oh, you look so happy. Did you find me a seed?" And she says, No, I couldn't find you a seed." And she said, "I couldn't find a house that has not been affected by death." And so, to me, that speaks to the idea that this is a universal thing, that we all are going to experience suffering, we're all going to experience pain, as long as we're in a sentient form. So the other thing is, then we have to get to why that is. Why is this experience wrought with pain? And it has to do with grasping, and grasping at things, and holding on to things, and attachments to things, and those things can be real or they can be imagined, because when you think about grasping, you think about things that we want, that we may never get, and they don't exist in anywhere other than our imaginations. But we grasp onto the idea of them, or the expectations of them, and then when that expectation isn't fulfilled, we experience disappointment and grief and pain and suffering and all that all those wonderful things. So let's talk about the three kinds of pains, and then we'll talk about kind of maybe how to overcome all of those, because there's got to be a good note, right? So the three kinds of pain: there's actual pain, there's like physical and mental and emotional pain that's taking place in the moment right now. Those are obvious pains, like if I fall and I hurt myself, that's an obvious pain. If somebody that I love dies, that's an obvious pain. Those are obvious pain, or I would have called them unavoidable pains. And then there's the cravings, and the cravings are kind of what I was talking about earlier. There's things that we think that we want, and we crave them, and the more that we crave, the less happy we are in the now, because we've decided in our minds that we'll be happy when we have these things. Well, it's obvious if we decide that we'll be happy when we have these things, what we're really saying is that we're not happy now, right? So, and then the other thing is our pleasures. And many people think, wow, how can pleasures be pain? Well, the thing about it is we are living in a non-permanent universe. Everything in the universe is in a constant state of fluctuation. So if I gain pleasure from something, and I get attached to that pleasure, get attached to that bliss, then eventually it's going to cause me pain, because eventually, because we're living in a non-permanent universe, that thing is going to be gone. It's no longer going to exist, and so I'm going to experience that loss. So those are why the Buddhists believe that to escape cyclical existence is kind of like the pinnacle of achievement, to escape from all of this suffering, because what they see here in cyclical existence is wrought with suffering. Now, all that being said, you're probably asking yourself, Or you're asking me, I guess. Well, then why do all these Buddhist dudes seem so happy? And you see this monk and they're always smiling, they're always peaceful, and they're always at joy. And part of it has to do with they've come to terms with all of this. And to understand all this kind of sets us up on a course towards greater sustainable happiness. Because as long as our happiness is dependent on external circumstances, then it's never going to be sustainable. It's completely impossible. If our happiness is based on health, it's impossible. If our happiness is based on wealth, it's impossible. If our happiness is based on sunny days, it's impossible. As long as our happiness is based on any external circumstance, it's impossible for it to be sustainable. So our happiness has to come from inside. So once we find happiness and a joy that's internal, that's not subject to external circumstances, then it can become sustainable happiness. See? Neat, huh? So when we realize how much samsara, or the external world, or how causes our pain, and more so how much we depend upon it to cause our pleasure, then we begin to realize that we have to go deeper inside and find self-fulfillment that's not subject to as much change as it will be, in samsara. So, so when you get into, that's when you get into meditations, and meditation is a great tool for learning this, because meditation can teach us two very, very, very important things. First of it is we can learn to kind of be objective about our own life and kind of step back and observe not only our own mind but our own phenomenon. And in doing so, we don't get so engaged and so wrapped up into it, and we can observe it. And so it kind of creates this kind of distance or buffer between our experience in samsara. And so it gives us a little bit of wiggle room so that we're not so reactionary in our life. And that's really what happens with so many people is they live reactionary lives. And as long as you're living a reactionary life, then it's really, really difficult to be happy or to have any kind of contentment. What I mean by that is if something happens and I react to it, and that reaction causes something else, which causes something else, and then I'm constantly kind of living this reactionary life, and I don't ever have the chance where I'm just acting upon my own ideas and principles, my own, whatever. So meditation kind of gives us that buffer, so that when something happens in our life, we don't immediately react. We're able to observe it, and then we're able to act, and we're able to act in a way that is going to liberate us further. One of the things that I love to say to students of mine is that you always have two choices, and that choice is between suffering and liberation, and the choice is always yours. And if you keep making the choice towards liberation over and over and over and over again, eventually you will become liberated. And what I mean by liberated is I mean free from attachment, free from the reactionary lifestyle, and free from the constant ups and downs that taking all of this for what it is, for face value, causes. So yeah. So there is a way out. I mean, all this isn't, it's like, yeah, we're born, and yeah, we're going to die, and we're going to get sick, and we're going to grow old, and everything that we love will eventually turn to dust. Even though that sounds really horrible, it doesn't have to be, because that really puts things into perspective. That is our point to begin. And once we know that, and once we understand that, then the way that we act in our life can have real meaning, and can gain us real peace and real serenity. So what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean by that is, again, if I realize that it's not always going to be sunny, there's going to be cloudy days, and so if I set up the expectation that I'm only going to be happy when it's a sunny day, I'm going to be miserable. I'm going to suffer, at least part of the time, because part of the time it's not going to be sunny. So once I come to that conclusion and I realize that that's the current state of things, then I can change my attitude. I can change me. I can change my mind, because my mind is the one that's experiencing all this. My mind is the one that decides whether this is pleasure or pain. My mind is the one that causes me suffering or causes me liberation. And the beauty of that is I have control over my mind. Well, I can have control over my mind if I learn to meditate and observe and train my mind. So I do not have control over, however, over the sun, or over the weather, or over other people, or any of that. So if I decide that if I can only be happy if I'm a gajillionaire, then I'm setting myself up to be miserable, because the likelihood of me becoming a gajillionaire, or especially living kind of a monastic life that I live, is not real great. So if I set up that expectation, then I'm already limiting the amount of happiness that I have. But then if I don't set that, and I change my mind once again, and I say, well, I will be happy with whatever I have, I'll be grateful for whatever I have, then I've changed everything. Now, the external world hasn't changed at all. The external world is exactly the same as it was before I started perceiving it differently. Samsara has not changed. What has changed is me. I've changed my perception changed my reaction changes my behavior changes my life. Easy, right? And this brings me back to one of my very favorite, this is going to be the closing thing that I'm going to say, and it's one of my favorite stories in Buddhism. And again, I'm paraphrasing terribly, so please don't jump down my throat if I get it wrong. There's a story where one of the disciples of Buddha come to Buddha, and he said, Buddha, during your first teaching, you said that all of samsara, all life is suffering. From the minute we're born to the minute we die, it's just suffering. Everything is suffering. And Buddha, shook his head, and then he said, but in the next lecture you said that you could obtain this state of nirvana where there is no more suffering, where you do not suffer, even though you're in this world. And Buddha shook his head, and the disciple said, how can both of them be true? And Buddha said, I'm aware that they are both true, because I'm aware that you think you're suffering, although I'm also aware that you're truly not. And that statement I thought about for a really, 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 really long time. And I found some great truth in it, because that's it. We think that we're suffering. We take all of this very seriously. We think that the world is happening to us, when in honesty the world is just happening, and we are a part of it. And it is entirely up to us how that experience plays out. One of the best analogies that I've heard many, many masters say is that if I smash my finger and I experience pain, do I blame my finger for the pain? It's my mind, my brain, that's experiencing the pain, not my finger isn't really causing the pain. My mind is telling me that my finger is in pain. My mind is constantly telling me that my life is in pain. But it's not my life that's causing the pain. It's my mind. Something to think about. Thank you all. I hope this hasn't been too cyclical and crazy. Thank you very much. Peace out. Until the next time.